Welcome on board the National Geographic Venture for our exploration of Southeast Alaskan temperate rainforests, bays, coasts, oceans, and wildlife. Over the course of the next 7 days, we'll be traveling on foot through the forests, we'll be using kayaks and paddle boards, and we'll be exploring in our exploration landing craft, or Zodiacs. We're hoping to see a wide variety of wonderful wildlife. We know it's going to be a great week. Welcome on board. On the very first morning of the voyage, I had the pleasure of waking everyone up early for humpback whales surrounding our ship in the sunshine right before we entered Holcomb Bay and then Tracy Arm, the 32-mile fjord leading to South Sawyer Glacier.
So a fjord is a very narrow but deep marine channel that has been carved by glaciers as they move out of the mountains and into the marine ecosystem. So we're currently moving through Tracy Arm, and at the very end of Tracy Arm, we're going to be taking Zodiacs out to South Sawyer Glacier.
It is an absolutely spectacular day here. We'll talk why John Muir came here, but he came in 1879, and when he was here, he described it as dim, dreary, and mysterious. But you guys are getting quite the opposite today, and it's not often like this, so savor it. Hopefully put some sunscreen on. We're gonna get going in just a second, and we're gonna round this corner, and you'll get your first full view of South Sawyer Glacier. So hang on. This is a really great first experience in Alaska because as we travel throughout, almost everything we see will have been made or impacted by glaciers. And this is always pretty surprising. People think that this ice is really ancient, but it's still quite old. But from snowfall to glacier ice and calving at the face of a glacier, it's probably about 250 years. So that stuff fell as snow, let's see, 1750? Again, this is peak Alaska. This is absolutely beautiful and what caused a lot of the things we'll see over the course of the next week.
Knowing the story of where I am and how to shoot it always starts with just, for me, I love maps. So physically, where on a map am I? Anybody know where we started? Juneau, that's great. Anyone know where Juneau is on the map?
It's near the top.
It's near the top. I like it, I like it. That's close enough. So Juneau's here. And so we came through here. That's where we were. This is where we were yesterday in the glacier. Coming back out here. And we came down here. So we're on QU Island right now, and we're right in here in this bay called Security Bay.
We've all heard of the tropical rainforests in more of the tropic places, other parts of the globe. But the reason you may not have heard too much of the temperate rainforest is because it is rare. And I'll tell you where it exists. It's 2,500 miles. It stretches from Northern California through British Columbia and up to as far as Kodiak in Alaska. It's right along the coast. And it isn't so much what the trees are, but it's the conditions, which is rainy, cool, foggy, almost coastal, maybe in just a little bit. But that has different trees. So if you're in the temperate rainforest in Northern California, it might be redwoods. If you're in the temperate rainforest in, let's say, British Columbia, that would be something more like Doug fir. And if you're in the temperate rainforest in southeast Alaska, it's spruce and hemlock trees. Do you know the term biomass, which means just the mass of biological life living in any one place? You are standing in a temperate rainforest which has the highest biomass of any environment on the planet.
This is Petersburg. Welcome to Petersburg, the town that fish built. And so that's what they call it, really, because this whole community was developed because of the prosperous fishing industry. And so the Klingets were fishing here for more than 2,000 years, and they had their own fish camp a little northeast of here at a place called Sandy Beach. And then at the turn of the century, a Norwegian man named Peter Bushman, Petersburg, thought it'd be a great place to set up a cannery, because close to here there's a glacier called LeConte Glacier, and it gives off big icebergs. And so they thought this would be a perfect place to set up a cannery, and they can keep the fish cool on the icebergs, you know, using the ice from the glacier that's coming into this area, and then they can use it for shipping. And so he started Icy Strait Packing Company, and it's changed names a few times, but it still is around today. And that's why we call it the town that fish built, because really the only reason this community was set up here was to come be a fish camp. Yep. See, and now about 3,000 people live here, just over, but it's still, fishing's still the primary source of income in the town. They'll fish all 5 species of salmon that we have in the Pacific coast, and they'll fish halibut. There'll be crab, the Dungeness crab you'll be eating tonight. So we have 5 main species of salmon that we're going to fish here in Alaska. So the thumb, what kind of salmon rhymes with thumb? Chum salmon. So, or the dog salmon we'll call them. The finger, so your pointer finger, this one's a little bit of a stretch. You can poke your eye. Sockeye, so sockeye salmon. Okay, what's the biggest finger, the biggest salmon? King salmon, okay, or the Chinook. What kind, this is your ring finger, you might wear this kind of metal as a ring. The silver salmon, and then the pink salmon, right?
There are people that even a town of only 3,000 people, that's still too many people. So this little group over here decided to set up to be off-grid. They're not on city power, they're not on city septic, they're over here on this side, and a few years ago they decided to incorporate. You are now in the city of Kuprianov, if you can believe that. You're in the Tongass National Forest. It's the largest national forest in the entire country. It's 17 million acres. It takes up a good lot of this Alexander Archipelago, what we call the Inside Passage. We're heading to a bog, and the very first thing that I want you to experience right now is look up and see how little of the sky you can see. Classic temperate rainforest. When we step into the bog, our world is going to change in like 10 minutes from a place like this, and all the plants are going to go low. Remember that acidic soil? It doesn't grow things very well. And so it's going to go down. So it's worth it just noticing this part here with temperate rainforest and the comparison. So welcome to the Indian Islands. These are really wild waters. This is one of my favorite places in Southeast Alaska and just in general in the world. I love this place. So we're just south of Glacier Bay where we'll be tomorrow. But when we get around this corner, you'll see we are open to the Pacific Ocean. That's why we get these really strong currents and this big tidal flow here. We're on a flood tide. There could be a lot of water movement, but it's really interesting to be here in this Inside Passage, and now we're going to be exposed to the open Pacific. So we're gonna go see if we can find some wildlife.
What we're going to be looking for, especially here in the kelp forest, are otters. So we'll be looking for otters all along this shoreline. So these are sea otters, different than river otters because they don't really live any of their life on land. They live completely in the sea. So they'll mate and breed and pup in the sea. They'll feed in the sea. They'll sleep here. They'll tangle themselves up in the kelp so they don't drift away. They will spend their entire lives in the ocean. And what I'm really interested in finding here are the stellar sea lions. So they're likely here in the water feeding right now. So they'll haul out to rest, but they'll be in here when the current's coming in. As I was telling you earlier, so these are much bigger species than the California sea lions you might be used to seeing. So on average, the males are usually 7 feet or a little bit larger. They have been recorded up to 12 feet. And the females, smaller than that, maybe 6 feet. But the males can weigh up over a ton. Remember, marine mammals are quite intelligent, and so they're curious with us as well.
The water's clear and you can see a really long way, and it's so fun to be up really close and personal with the animals.
We're going to take one of these trails that penetrates into the spruce hemlock forest and trend our way north-northeast, work our way up a hill. We're going to come across a drainage at some point. So this is where two slopes sort of converge. I imagine it's going to be quite damp in there. If it's not damp, then maybe we'll try to traverse up the drainage before dropping down a more gentle slope that we've checked out on a map. But again, we're bushwhacking. There's no actual trail up there. So that'll be our route. We'll come down somewhere near the shoreline and hopefully find a good spot to be picked up at. Probably a little bit closer to a meadow off to the east. We are doing essentially what the bear and the deer and the moose or are already doing naturally, and that's finding the best path up, the path of least resistance, the less steep path. So it kind of makes sense that as we're moving through here, our intuitions are telling us to take a certain route, and lo and behold, there are already game trails there because they already have that intuition. They've already blazed these trails. We're simply just doing the same thing as them and kind of approaching, traversing this habitat and terrain the same way as well.
This is Glacier Bay National Park. It's one of our great national parks, and it is 3.3 million acres. It's the size of Connecticut. And here we are out in the middle of it. It's a park with a lot of wildlife, a lot of scenic grandeur. 40 years ago, as a young ranger, I came up here to be a seasonal summer naturalist, meaning telling the stories of the bay. And I'm still here. So it is such a pleasure now that I'm retired to work for Lindblad and to tell the stories to our guests. There's a calmness to being on the water, and there's an excitement to seeing ice falls. And today, Glacier Bay has really been shining. So I've been out on deck since 6 this morning and just been surrounded by people excited to share and learn about this one of the 62 national parks. It's a place that people come because they want to see ice. It's like going back to the Ice Age to see tidewater glaciers. It's also a place that, because there's so much wilderness, that means there's a lot of habitat, which means it's a good place for wildlife. And the habitats kind of exist in 3 levels. There's the under the water, which is where we get our whales. Then there's in the skies, and there's fantastic birding here. And then there's up on the shoreline where we look for bears, and we've been very lucky today. And then there's up in the mountains where we see goats. You can't go wrong anytime, any place in Glacier Bay National Park.
Many people are surprised to see the vibrant, abundant life in the waters of Southeast Alaska. This is one of my favorite places in the entire world to dive. I love invertebrate animals, and we see various species in these cold, dark waters. These incredibly nutrient-rich and productive waters are supporting all of the wildlife we see here in Alaska.
It's been a wonderful week together on board the National Geographic Venture, and it's been a great pleasure to be with you as we've experienced this wonderful part of the planet. We hope to see you on board again. Thank you so much for joining us.
This trip has been great. Couldn't have imagined how wonderful it is, seeing everything and the glaciers, oh my, and hearing that sound was just amazing. You know, you see things and you think you're going to know what it's like, but the experience is so much better.